Hello and welcome back to Fame Under Fire, the Tupac Murder Trial from BBC Sounds with me, Anoushka Mutanda-Dougherty. Today was pretty explosive towards the latter end.
I'm telling you, the people that was at 662.
Just answer my question, sir. Yes or no?
I can't answer that without a what you call it.
Joining me now is Kathy Kenzora, who has her own podcast, History of the 90s, which you can find anywhere you get your podcast, who's actually self-funding to be out here to cover this trial and is very dedicated to this. Today was a slower start, but my goodness, that afternoon. Let's talk about James McDonald.
Wow. Yes, exactly. Things got very heated pretty quickly. He was someone who was running security at Club 662 on the night of the Tupac shooting. He worked for Suge Knight, maybe unofficially under the table, as he said, but he was running security that night. And so they brought him on to testify about what he knew about what happened that night. But it quickly became a conversation about what he knew about what happened after the shooting in the days following what happened in Compton. And he got very upset. He didn't want to talk about it. He said point blank, "I don't like Keffe D. I don't like this man." He looked right at him and he said, "But I don't want to put him to jail. I've been to jail. I don't want to put another black man in jail." And he said to Keffe D a couple of times, like, "What is your lawyer doing?" When the defense was asking him questions about what happened after the shooting when everyone went back to Compton. And he said, "You know, what is your lawyer doing? Get him to stop, because I don't want to say something that's going to put you in jail."
Yeah, and we've heard a lot about gang activity in this trial because, of course, there is a gang enhancement and they're trying to establish what the culture of gangs was like. But today is the first time we've actually heard from somebody who is a self-described gangbanger and ex-Mob Piru, James McDonald. James takes a stand and almost immediately says, "Treat me as a hostile witness to the prosecution. I do not want to be here. I was subpoenaed." And then they said they were going to hold me in contempt of court in California if I didn't turn up.
I got to explain to everybody in here. You ask me something, I'm going to be honest about. You ask me something I don't want to talk about, you're going to have a problem. Treat me as a hostile witness. You're not going to talk to me and tell me as a grown man what I have to do up here. I'm not finna send him to prison. You are.
Now, we'll start kind of with what the prosecution had to say. Obviously, they've got the burden of proof. They brought him onto the stand, and they're asking him questions about retaliation. They said at one point, if Tupac hit you, would you have to retaliate? What did he have to say?
He said, "I would have killed him. I would have shot him." If Tupac, because I guess there's a rumor, I hadn't heard that rumor. There's a rumor going around that Tupac may have actually clocked him at some point. And Mob James, I think is what his moniker is. And he said, "No, not true. If that happened, I would have shot him. He would have been dead."
And I think this speaks to the idea of that the prosecution have been trying to present from the beginning, that within this culture, when somebody attacks somebody physically, there has to be retaliatory action, which they're talking about what happened at the MGM and trying to paint the picture that Keffe D absolutely had to retaliate for what happened to Orlando Anderson. But other than that, the prosecution, examining the witness, talking to the witness was pretty smooth. But then Sanft stands up and it gets weirdly hostile really quickly because, like you say, he's at Club 662. So what the defense are trying to do is say, you weren't anywhere near the shooting, so how are you relevant here? You're just another witness who heard about what happened. But McDonald testifies pretty quickly, but everybody knew. Talk to me a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, he said that everybody knew quickly what had happened, and within hours, people were driving back to Compton. It takes, like he said, 3 hours to get back home. And word was on the street about what had happened and that there was going to be retaliation for what had happened. So people, it sounded like, were like getting prepared. He said, if you're not prepared, you're in trouble. You have to be prepared. So he was being pushed by the defense to give more details, and he wouldn't, because he didn't want to implicate Sanft's client. And so it was such a weird, bizarre moment, because he had to say to the defense, like, "Hey man, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to send your client to jail? Like, don't ask me any more questions."
But you could see what the defense were pushing for. They were pushing for him to say, "I wasn't there, it's hearsay, someone told me, someone told the people in Compton, but we actually don't have any real witnesses to the shooting." But what ended up happening was him saying to Keffe D, I mean, guys, come on, in the middle of a courtroom, to the defendant, who he has already said he doesn't like, "You need to check your lawyer, this dude is tripping." And then at one point he says, "I'm not finna send you to jail. This guy is the guy that you've hired to defend you in this court case." It was unbelievable. He also turned to the judge and said, "Am I supposed to answer this?"
Asking me questions that can hurt him. And like I told them, I'm trying to avoid to answer the questions that they might look at me and say something is wrong.
Well, let me put it this way. Let me help you out with this.
Thank you.
So these people right here, what they want to know from you is, did you see who shot Tupac?
I told you no.
Correct. So outside of that question, right, the next question I'm asking you is, when you went back to Compton, was it like a Southside Crip shoots a Piru Blood, and then a Piru Blood shoots a Southside Crip? Is that the tension that we're talking about?
Do I answer this?
That's a straightforward question. It's a yes or no answer.
But it got emotional towards the end because he actually then addressed Keffe D directly about why he didn't really want to be there and turning his own life around and what he's doing with his own life now.
Yeah, and then after court, he waited in the lobby and he eventually spoke to the defense lawyer to apologize, to say like, hey, I don't know you. I didn't mean to be hostile. I didn't want to be there and I want you to know. And they seemed to shake hands and be okay. And then when he was speaking to reporters, he said he's a different man now. He's 61 years old. He's raising his grandchildren. He wants to put that life behind him. He doesn't want to have to be on the stand and talk about things that he did that he's embarrassed about or ashamed about now.
But ultimately, it was pretty damning testimony because after the cross-examination from Sanft, he does say there were people in the entourage from Mob Piru behind Tupac's car who knew who did the shooting, and they got on their walkie-talkies and they told people in Compton, or they drove back and told people themselves. And after that, Orlando Anderson and Duane Keffe D Davis were targets in Compton.
Yes, that is the part that was incredibly damning, and there was no way out of that. And, Sanft may have been disappointed that that's what it came to.
I mean, the hostility was apparent. He kept saying, just answer my question, answer my question.
With Michael Sanft, the defense attorney, too, he's been very cordial so far, and he is very friendly with the witnesses and with the prosecution. So it was surprising to see him at a certain point say, like, can you just answer the question? Yes or no? What is the answer? So it was definitely a vibe change in the courtroom.
Absolutely. But the other interesting part about McDonald's testimony pertains to Reggie Wright Jr. And we've heard this name over and over again. Keffe D in the last couple of weeks did interviews before this trial saying, I'm pointing the finger now at Reggie Wright Jr., no longer Sean Diddy Combs, who I previously was. So we've been waiting to hear what the theory is from the defense. And they kind of skirted around it in opening statements saying, this guy was working security for Suge Knight and told everybody not to carry guns. This guy's dad was in the Compton's police department. Reggie Wright Sr. was in charge of the gang unit there. But when James McDonald was asked pretty directly, did Reggie Wright Jr. have anything to do with the death of Tupac Shakur? He gave a pretty clear statement.
Yeah, he said absolutely not. He said there is no way he could have been involved or would have been involved because Tupac was their money ticket, their meal ticket, because he was Death Row Records at the time. He was their biggest act. So why would you go and arrange to have him killed? So he came right out and said he does not believe that Reggie Wright had anything to do with it.
The issue with accusing Sean Diddy Combs, as Keffe D has done in the past, is it's consistent with his guilt, not inconsistent with his guilt. If Sean Diddy Combs ordered the killing but you carried it out, you're still criminally liable. So pointing the finger at Reggie Wright Jr. is a convenient defense strategy because that is inconsistent with the guilt of Keffe D. And now that's kind of been eliminated by James McDonald's testimony. But then we heard from Reggie Wright himself. What did he have to say?
Well, he was interesting because part of it focused on who became the head of Death Row Records after Suge Knight went to jail. And he went to jail after that beating at the MGM Grand that led up to the shooting because he was in violation of his probation. There's this fight. Why wasn't Reggie Wright Jr. there to stop the fight or to keep Suge out of it? That one night, conveniently, he wasn't there, and then Suge Knight ends up in jail. And who's the GM? Who becomes the head of Death Row Records? Reggie Wright Jr. does. But I thought they did a good job of making it clear that he was the head, but in name only. He wasn't really, having access to all the money at the company. He was just basically shuffling papers and bringing them back and forth to the attorney and to the prison where Suge Knight was serving his time, as far as his testimony anyway.
The defense are trying to introduce this idea that Reggie Wright Jr. had a lot of control over who had security, Tupac and Suge Knight. They said at one point, on the most important night for Suge Knight, you let him down. And he said, unfortunately, yes. And then they're introducing the idea that he benefited monetarily from what happened to Suge Knight and Tupac, saying, did you know that on the night of the 7th of September 1996, that death row record was valued at $500 million.
I mean, it just represents sort of the quality of security that was being provided. He revealed a story that Tupac ended up having to take a taxi over to the Mike Tyson fight because Suge didn't show up to pick him up. And the fact that there was only one security guard with Tupac when they had instituted a rule that there needed to be two after Tupac released his diss track against Biggie, and there was only one, that was brought up as, you're saying the most famous rapper in the world at the time, you didn't make sure he had two security guards. And he was like, well, you know, if I had have known what was going to happen that night, I would have done a better job of looking after him.
After this particular song came out in about May or June, we upped it to 2 security officers.
What song are you talking about?
It was a song called Hit 'Em Up.
We got a bit of a picture of what the security situation was from McDonald earlier, saying, yeah, there was Reggie's security team, but there was also Mob Piru, and we would drag you out of the club. We'd do whatever we wanted. And then Reggie later says, I trusted the Mob Piru guys, so I saw them as extra security, and Tupac was with them, and Suge Knight was with them on that night. But something else that was really interesting, which was brought up in opening statements by the defense, was the fact that Reggie Wright Jr. had communicated to his security team that they should not carry firearms on the night of the 7th of September. And Reggie spoke to that.
Yeah, that was an interesting story. I don't know if it's true. Just by what he said was that club 662, where the club that Suge Knight owned, he didn't actually own it. We learned he was in the process of it being transferred into his name, and they had some permitting or something that they needed to do still to get it transferred over. So that particular night, their attorney had said, you need to put on a good show. Everything needs to be above board because we're, in the process of getting permitted. So I want you guys to be on your best behavior, basically. So apparently word was sent out to Reggie's guys, no firearms tonight, nobody carry your sidearm, whatever, because we want to not have guns in the club. We want to make sure everything's above board tonight. So that was his explanation as to why no one was carrying a firearm.
Which was really interesting because that was a big question that was set up by Sanft in opening arguments. And that question appeared to be answered today. Whether there's going to be testimony that contradicts that later on down the line, all we knew is there was a lot of eyes on the Reggie Wright Jr. testimony, and it definitely, towards the end of the day, we started to see and hear from some of those people that they've been teeing us up to hear from. But the beginning of the day, there were slower moments. There were experts on the stand. We took a long time going through the MGM footage and establishing what a VHS recorder is and how it could be recorded over. Another interesting thing, I didn't know jury members could talk here. The jury members were cracking jokes in the middle of, not knowing what a cell phone was and all this kind of stuff. That's crazy.
It's very interactive, this courtroom. I'm really surprised too. I'm from Canada, so the American justice system is also a little bit of a novelty for me. But I have to admit, I've never seen where jurors are allowed to ask questions during the trial. Often they're allowed during deliberations to send in questions. So yeah, no, it's been very interactive. And I think the judge has kind of given us that, set the tone of the court. And even before, during jury selection or at the end of jury selection, she said to them, if you want to bring in snacks, if you want to bring in a drink or stand up and stretch. So there is kind of a casual atmosphere that is very surprising.
Yeah, absolutely. At one point, the judge was like, if you can smell burning, don't worry, it's just a burnt bagel at the back of the room.
If anybody's smelling something burning, it's a burnt bagel from back there. So don't worry, we're all fine.
But it's a weird juxtaposition because at the beginning of the day, you actually went through some very graphic photos of Tupac's body during the autopsy. Just talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I got an indication that that's what was going to happen because there is a court worker who is sitting with the family of Tupac Shakur. There's about 7 family members that are here sitting in the front row, and she escorted the majority of them out before the pathologist came on the stand and the crime analyst came on the stand. 3 did remain in the courtroom, so they were there when autopsy photos were put on a courtroom monitor so everyone could see them. So it was a bit jarring, obviously. It started by showing us a green body bag with a name tag with Tupac's name on it and, the police seal. And then it went straight into autopsy photos of his body, pictures of the profile, his face profile. He still had a lot of the medical equipment attached. He still had tubes and wires from his ventilator and different things. But then there were up close photos of bullet wounds and of his tattoos for identification. But the reason they were entered as evidence is the medical examiner was communicating to the jury what the cause of death was. And by showing the entrance wounds from where the bullets entered in his chest and in, I guess there was one that went in his thigh up into his abdomen. And she communicated that those would have been the bullet wounds that killed him.
And she spoke about there being like 2 liters of blood in his lungs at some point. It was very graphic. Cause of death was bullet wounds, but manner of death ruled a homicide. But we have still yet to hear from anybody who says they witnessed the shooting firsthand.
Yeah, we've heard from 2 people now who heard the shooting, one on the first day, one on the second day, but no one who actually saw the shooting. They were in the vicinity, heard the bullets or heard the gunshots, looked and saw like the other cars, Suge Knight's car peeling away and the entourage pulling away as well, but no one actually saw that has testified so far, has actually saw the shooting.
Yeah, I mean, the closest thing we got was James saying there were people who I know who saw it, but that's still secondhand.
Yeah.
That's still hearsay.
Exactly.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens in the rest of this trial, but it definitely took a turn today. Thank you so much for coming and breaking that down for us.
My pleasure.
That was Kathy Kenzora from History of the 90s, and that's it for this episode of the Tupac Murder Trial from Fame Under Fire with me, Anoushka Mutanda-Dougherty. If you want to support this channel, please like, hype, and subscribe, and make sure you're locked in because we're doing daily updates for this trial.